What would drive one of the most famous poets of Japan at the brink of his career to leave the comforts of the capital of Edo, now Tokyo, to embark on a dangerous journey to the north of Japan? For Matsuo Basho, it was a sense of wanderlust and the desire to capture nature's beauty in poetry. So he embarked in the year of 1689 on a journey into the deep north of Japan. Together with his companion Sora, he embarked on a 156-day journey in March of 1689. Today we want to explore the work that he wrote down after that. Hosomichi, the most famous travelogue that Basho ever wrote, and that has the translated title The Narrow Road to the Deep North. So come on a journey with me and exploring the journey that Basho took, and also learning about what he learned on the journey and the poetry he wrote on the way. After only staying at home for around half a year after returning from his last journey in the autumn of 1688, he feels this yearning to explore the north of Japan. The north that was considered so dangerous because of its wilderness and the lack of civilization. So you would never really know what you encountered there. But he could just not keep his feet idle, so he just wanted to embark on that journey and to explore the north of Japan. So he writes the following lines at the start of Hosomichi. Days and months are travelers of eternity. So are the years that pass by. Those who steer a boat across the sea or drive a horse over the earth till they succumb to the weight of years spend every minute of their lives traveling. There are a great number of ancients, too, who died on the road. I myself have been tempted for a long time by the cloud-moving, wind-filled with a strong desire to wander. On this map you can see Basho's travel route through the north of Honshu, the biggest island or the main island of Japan. So the travels led him from Edo, or his home in Fukagawa in Edo, all the way to the north to Hiraizumi. This is a famous place where the Commander Yoshitsune died on the battlefield, who was a commander of the Minamoto clan, and Basho wrote a famous poem about him that I will read to you later. Then he was traveling all the way along the coast from Kisagata down to the Hokuriku region, and then when he arrived in Tsuruga, he got back to the inner lands and he ended his journey in Ogaki, which is also not far from Kyoto and Osaka, if you want to find your way on the map these days. So all in all, his journey took him 156 days. But he was not traveling all the time. He was also taking time to meet acquaintances and to write haiku together with them and to gather inspiration on the journey. The places that I want to talk to you about today are, for one, Hiraizumi, that I was talking about before, and then Kanazawa, which is a famous city today, and that I visited myself when visiting Japan last year. And then I want to talk about the lessons that we can learn from Basho and that Basho learned himself on the journey. Basho does not travel alone, but in the company of Sora, or with his usual name Kawai Sogoro. He is a disciple of Basho and he's so inspired to accompany him on his journey. And both of them, when traveling together, keep a diary and sketches of their travels, while Kawai Sora's diary is seen as more direct and more concise, keeping the details of the journey, like how the weather was, what they experienced, and like more of the outer conditions. Basho's Okuno Hosomichi, this travel writing, is more poetic, and he also takes some artistic liberties, including scenes that might not have been experienced actually in that journey. For example, he writes a poem about two prostitutes who stay at the same inn as he stays at, and he overhears their conversation, and then he writes about that, and he also writes a haiku. But Sora does not take account of that at all. So this is one example where you can see that he might have taken some liberties, but in the end, this Okuno Hosomichi is also considered to be his greatest work. So in between his travels, there is one section where he visits Hiraizumi. This is the place where the so-called Fujiwara clan had been living, and their dynasty was wiped out in a brief and violent civil war. Hiraizumi is the site of the former golden age of the north, and this was created by the Fujiwara clan. And Basho, who is also trained in history and knows about the history of this place, is deeply moved by that. So when he gets to that place, he writes a poem that goes like this. Natsukusa ya tsuwamono domo ga yume no ato. The translation by Nobuyuki Yuasa that I've been reading goes like this. A thicket of summer grass is all that remains of the dreams and ambitions of ancient warriors. Of course, as always, there are different possibilities to translate this haiku poem, because Nobuyuki Yuasa usually takes some liberties in the translations to make them more poetic or flowery, in my opinion. But I want to give you another one that you can find all over the internet, and that is more literal, more close to the text. It would go like this. Summer grasses, all that remain of warrior dreams. So it is not the dreams and ambitions of ancient warriors, because in that there is quite an interpretation already, but it is just describing the warrior dreams. And this more literal and shorter version grasps the essence of the original haiku poem better, I think, because it just shows that you just need a few syllables to express something very deep. So with this poem, Basho pays his respect to history and to the warriors that have been dying in that ground in Hiraizumi, and the only thing remaining is this summer grass. And the way he describes it in his journal, in the Okuno Hosomichi, he writes that he has written this while standing on the ruins of the Fujiwara estate to capture the way that nature outlasts everything that humans ever did. And he writes before this poem, when a country is defeated, there remain only mountains and rivers, and on a ruined castle in spring only grasses thrive. And the summer grass is the symbol that he uses in the poem. There's also one quite funny poem by his companion Sora that I also wanted to read to you because I enjoyed it a lot. His poem goes like this. Uno hana ni kanefusa mi yuru shiraga kana. The translation, I have two versions again. One by Nobuyuki Yuasa, going like this. I caught a glimpse of the frosty hair of Kanefusa wavering among the white blossoms of Unohana. The other one is the one you can find more of on the internet. That is a more literal translation, but I couldn't find the translator. So if you know who it is, please let me know. It goes like this. In the Deutzia flowers, I see Kanefusa's white hair. And you have to know, as background information, Kanefusa was a faithful retainer who fought bravely for the Fujiwara clan despite his old age. So Sora was reminded of his white hair when seeing these unohana flowers that are spring flowers. It is translated as doitsia. It's unohana in Japanese, and this poem is quite lovely because it's like both capturing this history, and then it's also witty and fun because it's like the white hair wavering in the wind and then the flower wavering in the wind. So that was quite funny for me. But this poem, especially the one by Basho, is also one of the most famous ones that he has ever written, and also I think probably the most famous one of the Okuno Hosomichi. So if you want to keep one of them in the mind, then go for this one. So in around the middle of the journey in July 1689, Basho and Sora arrive in the city of Kanazawa in the northern region of Japan. I myself have visited that place and have also visited some of the beautiful monuments that were erected for Basho. It is quite funny to see. I will show you in the next scene where you can find some traces of Basho. The first Basho monument that I encountered is to be found at a very busy intersection of two streets in the middle of Kanazawa. It is close to an inn where Basho spent 8 nights out of his total 9 when he was in Kanazawa, and there are some inscriptions written on the monument. It is quite funny to see this monument in the middle of the city, imagining how over 300 years ago this must have looked completely different. And it would have been easy for me to overlook the monument because it is so small in comparison to the huge buildings surrounding it. The next monument is found at the Hermitage of Saito Isen, where Basho is said to have held a haiku meeting. It is the place where the haiku called "The sun sets red, yet the autumn wind whispers faintly, bringing some relief" was composed. Originally, I had planned to include some clips that I made of the wind that gently brushes the bushes here around the monument, because I found that so beautiful and so suiting to the poem that I just read, as the autumn wind bringing some relief. But I must have deleted them when I was transferring them from my SD card to my computer, so unfortunately I can only show you these pictures. Here you can see the Gannenji temple where Basho attended the memorial haiku meeting for the poet Issho that I just talked about. He had passed in the previous year, and the Issho mound is located within the temple grounds. Basho wrote the haiku here, and it is part of the legacy of his visit here. So after 156 days in early September, Basho reaches his destination in Ogaki, and he is reunited with friends and celebrates that he has survived and also that he is together with them again. But it shall not be his last journey. Still, he takes 5 years to rewrite and rework Okuno Hosomichi, which just shows us, I think, that it was really important to him, and it was not something that he just considered some kind of travel sketch, but one of his most important works that he actually wanted to share with the world and that he wanted to make as beautiful as possible. I want to share with you some of the most important lessons I think we could learn from Basho in the next scene.
There's one very beautiful quote from Basho about his own poetic understanding, where he says, quote, "What is important is to keep our mind light in the world of true understanding, and returning to the world of our daily experience to seek therein the truth of beauty. No matter what we may be doing at a given moment, we must not forget that it has a bearing upon our everlasting self, which is poetry." So it's just about the truth of beauty in whatever we are doing in a moment. And I think also thinking of his journey, that the beauty that he finds is always in the moment and in taking the time out of your day to just explore the beauty around you. For example, I'm exploring these absolutely beautiful flowers, the crocuses around me here, and I feel incredibly blessed to just be able to sit here in the sunshine and explore that. So that is like one of the lessons that we can learn, just to savor the moment and to also try to capture it maybe in poetry if we feel like it. Also the detachment of physical belongings. I think these days Basho would have probably been a minimalist if he lived today, because at the beginning of Hosomichi, of his travelogue, he says that he's a little sad that he could not leave more things behind because he wanted to travel as lightly as possible. And I think that is both concerning his, like, the physical belongings, but also concerning the lightness of his mind, of not being detached to things that he wants to leave behind. He shows us that the less we own, the easier we can move on and just take life as it comes and just change ourselves. And there's a beauty in that. The last lesson, probably my favorite of the three, is that life itself is the journey. So it's not about the destination, and that's also nothing new these days, but it's really beautiful. He says that every day is a journey, and the journey itself is home. And I think there is a beauty in that too, because it's not that you really have to embark on such a long and dangerous journey as Basho did, to explore those little moments and to really understand what it means to just be alive. So you might ask, what other things did Basho do when returning from his journey to the deep north and arriving in Ogaki and rewriting his work so much? He lived in his third Basho hut in the winter of 1691, also in Edo again. So the huts were rebuilt every time they got destroyed. And although the last one got sold and Basho did not really expect to return to Edo, he actually did return, and he got built another one. So he was really lucky in that regard. For the last time, he left Edo in the summer of 1694 to go to Ueno, where he was born, and to Kyoto before arriving in Osaka. And there he came down with a stomach illness, and that was really bad. He was surrounded by his disciples and died peacefully, surrounded by his friends. I think the death of Basho is probably the best way to close this video as well. He died only at the age of 50, but he had a very interesting and complex life. He was traveling a lot, extensively, and remarkably so. Most travels he did in the last few years of his life. So that must have been really intense. But you can see that the way that his life and his poetry are intertwining and becoming one in a way that is exceptionally beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the deep north together with me and Basho, and I hope you consider reading the book yourself, because it is really one of my favorite Japanese books ever written, especially because it is so different from just reading a memoir or a diary or just a poetry collection.
this form of the haibun is something that is so powerful and so moving and interesting, and it's never tiresome because there's always something happening. And whether you are worrying about Basho and Sora and the dangerous events, or also the weather conditions that they are suffering from, or the illnesses they fall under, or you just enjoy the poetry, or you're always really engaged. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel. Maybe share the video with other lovers of Japanese writing and poetry and literature, and consider giving the video a thumbs up. That would mean a lot to me. Comment down below if you know Okuno Hosomichi, The Narrow Road to the Deep North, or not, and if you consider reading it now. And I will hopefully see you in my next video. Thank you for watching and for your time, and bye bye. Have a good day.